I used to think that the secret to getting people's attention and getting people to listen to my podcast was to start right away with a lot of energy. But I want to do things differently, and my podcast is different. Instead of trying to give you instant gratification, I'm going to invite you to slow down instead. Whatever made you click on this link, whatever you were interested in gaining from the conversation that I'm about to have, see if you can set that aside and just be present listening. Instead of listening to it like you'd listen to other podcasts and try and get a whole bunch of ideas, listen to it like you would listen to poetry or music. You listen for meaning and for feeling. And I invite you to do this because I think if you do, in fact, I know if you do, you're going to see a very rich depth underneath the surface. This is the Rich Life Realization Podcast, where we explore the richest life possible. If you are an entrepreneur and you would like to see a transformation in your business, then this is the episode for you. I'm going to have a guest on today. His name is Michael McDonald, and he is a gentle warrior. He's a philosopher coach for entrepreneurs and leaders. So if that's you, listen up, peek up your ears, and we're going to be having an enriching conversation on the Rich Life Realization podcast, where you might have some transformation after just listening to it. It's definitely possible because he's been working in this space for a little while. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rich. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. We had connected online through Facebook, which was a great place to connect. And something that popped out about you for me was you post all of these insights, and each one is a little bit different. And so I was seeing some of your wisdom, and I was like, oh wow, I think he would be a great candidate for a podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you've been a coach for a little bit, and you were telling me before we got on about your coaching journey. I'd like you to share kind of what got you into coaching and how you coach now.
Yeah. So what got me into coaching originally? So I used to be a computer programmer, and this is probably around 2005 or so that I started turning a corner and discovered personal development work. Because I was a programmer doing contract work, working from home in Silicon Valley, and had this feeling of just, yeah, like there has to be more to life than this.
Mm.
And started studying a variety of things, got involved with acting for a while, which feels like sort of a transformational bridge for me, where I was programming during the day, then doing rehearsals for plays at night. And I remember I first heard of coaching. I was in a professional acting training up in San Francisco, and a friend was on a call with a life coach, which I'd never heard of a life coach before. So I had this image of just someone hovering over you saying live, you can do it. And yeah, sometimes there's a bit of that within life coaching. I got involved with authentic relating work, because I was just, it was most social work, inner work. So it got me started. I did enough of that I just started coaching somewhere around 2011, and eventually went full time, went pro. And I've been through multiple lifetimes through that journey, discovering coaching, starting coaching, different layers of it, different insights that I've had, and the life that I lead now is so incredibly cool, and it would have been hard to even imagine this from where I started, probably back 2005-ish.
Mm.
And I've been through all sorts of layers of working like social, relational, masculine, feminine dynamics, various counseling and coaching programs, figure out the professional side. Uh, Steve Chandler was a huge influence on me.
Mhm.
Like that's what turned me around to become like super professional and also give me a lot of exposure to work within corporate executive. That's some of the work that I do now and business. I was spent 6 years in an energy healing school because developing these like subtle energy superpowers, and then sort of moved on from that maybe I don't know, like maybe like 4 years ago now. Um, so there's all these cool things that I've integrated in medicine work and huge influence from the three principles work or understanding. A huge fan of anything that has to do with non-dual spirituality and anything to do with just things where miracles occur and life suddenly looks simpler and more amazing. And it seems like it's by doing less rather than by doing more.
Mm.
I've definitely been fascinated with and a student of how change happens and what's possible, even with the things that might seem like edge cases that break the mold. I'm really interested in finding out what's going on there. Like when someone just like magically heals from a disease, I get curious instead of just writing it off as like, oh yeah, that's sort of like a rounding error. It's just what's going on there? And I keep on like I'm like keep on unfolding and looking for the mysteries of the universe. And magical things start happening more often for
Yeah.
both me and for my clients. So
Hmm.
like that's kind of what I do. And being a coach, like seriously, it's got to be the best job in the world. Like I get to continue learning about everything, working on myself, and that's part of my job. It's the only career I know of where continuously developing, continuously growing is an integral part of the job, if not an absolute job requirement.
Mhm.
I sometimes describe it as I'm professionally a good human being.
He's pro. He's a, well, you had magical like energy superpowers. You didn't fight crime with those or anything like that?
Nope.
No. No. Well,
I
coaching is good. Coaching is a good second.
Yeah. Like it turns out the most and the interesting thing is like though I had some like magical healing hands-on powers,
Yeah.
I've still found it's been even more impactful just having conversations over Zoom
Mm.
than the hands-on like healing of wounds and like the psychological work, like powerful, deep psychological work that is healing.
Mm.
I've found that profound insights, which can be had just having semi-intellectual conversations over Zoom, are actually more impactful for people in their lives.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of started to talk about this, but what does transformation mean to you?
For me, transformation points towards like whenever there's a shift into greater understanding, like whenever someone has an insight, whenever someone has an aha, when sometimes it's an idea that they had suddenly sunk in a little bit deeper. Like most people have had variations of like, oh my God, we're all one. And every once in a while you have that experience, you experience it at just a little bit deeper level. It's like, oh, wait a second. Okay, yeah, we really are all interconnected. And you see it a little bit more clearly. Sometimes there are things where someone has an idea and suddenly becomes real. It's just like, oh, it's actually that way.
Mm,
And the world suddenly gets more luminous, more clear. Sometimes it's something unexpected. It's like, oh, I thought the world was like this, but actually it's like this.
mhm.
That explains everything.
I
It's like,
love those.
it's like you love them. Sometimes you hate them for a while.
Yes, of
Like,
course. Yeah,
like every
you're
once in
like,
a while, you realize why all of the relationships weren't working, and it happened to be you and this thing that you were just wrong about, or you didn't see that you were doing. It's just like, oh crap. I've been doing this my entire life, and it's been messing up everything. Glad to see it, but ouch.
yes. Sometimes our insights and our realizations are less oh and more like head slaps like
It's like, oh God. And yeah, so transformation, like like that's sort of like the unit of transformation is having an insight.
Mm,
But it's kind of like a going up in elevation. And a thing about transformation is it's not necessarily any circumstance changing. Like people might be no better at a skill, they still might be in the same job, they still might have the same habits going on, they still might be doing the same things, they might still be having the same emotional, physical, chemical experience, but somehow they've clicked up and they're a little bit higher consciousness, and the world suddenly looks different. A cool thing that some of my clients have been experiencing recently is going like going back into having like a triggered experience and like feeling terrible, but having the parallel experience of feeling totally fine and totally okay within that experience.
mm.
Like seeing that it's a transient thing, not identifying with a terrible experience. It's like, oh, my human is just having a bad day. And instead of it looking like a problem, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, there's kind of like and you brought up like acting. It is kind of like a drama, and there's a separation between us and our character that we can kind of see and experience. That even if we're in like this like a really dramatic and tragic play, we can kind of have this enjoyment of the drama, even though we're we're struggling and working through challenge. There's a part of that you almost can take a step back and let go of your character and realize, oh, I am not my character right now.
Mhm. And the more I've seen it as a drama, the more I've seen myself as the player,
Mm,
the more fun it can be in a way in any experience.
mm,
Like I've definitely had some like dark and sad, tragic experiences in life where I've also gotten to observe myself. I think there's like once, I remember receiving the news that one of my best friends had died, and this was like way back when, but it was like during the acting time. There's kind of this acting awareness that I got to watch myself be with that experience instead of fully identifying with it, instead of it being like something terribly personal. It was still sad and there's grief, but there is an awareness within it. Like I wasn't identified with the grief. I wasn't pulled into it. And more recently, I think this might have been 2 years ago. So my father had an incident where he was rushed out to the hospital. He was in Florida. I'm in California. I didn't know if he was alive. I didn't know what was going on. I just received the news. And it's like I could feel for some reason out here, like I could feel the story coming towards me. Like I could freak out right now. I could feel
Mm,
terrible right now. I could follow all of the cultural scripts of all the bad things that you're supposed to feel in this kind of situation. And I also had like this creative space where it's like it doesn't seem like that's a useful set of experiences and thinking to go into right now. I had the wherewithal to ask myself, like, how would I like to think about this?
mm,
What mindset would I like to step into here in this situation? I actually ended up stepping into just being practical. It's like, okay, I'm going to contact family members. I started a Google Doc, just gathering all the information, the things I knew and all the things I didn't know, and started coordinating. I became the practical detail person. My father did make it. Like he ended up in surgeries in the hospital for like 2 weeks. It was a dramatic event, but I never went into freaking out about it because it just didn't look like a good idea to do that.
mm.
And acting planted some of the seeds for that, having some space between who I am and the emotions, the stories, the character, and through transformational work, getting to realize that that applies for the regular me as well, not just characters when I'm on a stage.
Mhm.
It's like I don't need to take myself personally. And in fact, everything goes better when I don't.
Yeah,
My life becomes amazing mostly by not thinking about myself much at all.
absolutely. And Sid Banks, who is one of the the founder of the Three Principles understanding, talks about impersonalizing, and that when we take things less personal, when we're not in that personalization, that life tends to flow a lot better. That we are connected with a greater intelligence that guides us in the moment. And for you, it made sense to start putting things together.
Mhm.
And maybe a different moment, it would have a different response.
Yeah. Another way that I've recently started describing it, I think there's some influence from Bio Akamalafe here, is decentering agency, or it could be like decentering the personal.
Hmm.
Like I still have the personal. I still have all the feelings and the stories, and I'm still a human being, and I still have lots of judgments, and it's like,
You're still one of those?
yeah, it's like I haven't quite shed all of this, and I'm realizing that I don't think I want to like fast forward to shedding everything because I'm pretty sure that means death, which isn't really something to fast forward to. Um, but just it's not the center of who I am. The center of who I am is something else. It's spirit and in internal family systems, it's the capital S self. It's spirit. It's this magic or it's this soul. Maybe it has like this flavor to it, which is just Michael-like. And it's like that's the natural orientation. It turns out to line up even with Ian McGilchrist is a person I've been following for the last maybe 2 years as well. And he's done research into the hemispheres of the brain. And from that, he's like branched out into spiritual territory as well from the insights that he had there. But the natural orientation of the brain is actually being centered with identifying with that more spacious, receptive territory of the right brain, where you have and use the left brain, which is meant to be a trusted advisor. The thing is, it's a trusted advisor that really thinks that it's right and it should be in charge.
Hmm.
And culturally, we've sort of like given in to the left brain.
Mhm.
We've given in to like that everything should be rational, and we've given in to the ego. We've given in to like, trying to be right.
Mhm.
So a lot of my work is just course correcting that to like, yeah, the reason that you feel terrible is because you're out of alignment with how you actually work.
Mm. And that reminds me of the quote that it says something like the mind is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant.
Yeah. I forget who said that, but that's basically the same thing. Like that's
Yeah.
the name of Ian McGilchrist's book is The Master and His Emissary.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
the same metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's something that's kind of magical that happens when we realize that our default state is connection, is love, is clarity, and that we have the ability to take ourselves away from that. Now, we don't mean to. We're doing it innocently. But when we realize that that is the default, that's the center, it makes life so much easier. You're not
Yeah.
you're not fighting for the center anymore.
And that like that part where it makes it easier. One of the things I love about this is that because probably like if someone's listening to this so far, it sounds kind of abstract, sound kind
Hmm.
of spiritual. It's like, yeah, it feels great, but will it help me with this? Will it help me with this difficult person? Will it help me with this relationship? It's so practical. It's it seems really indirect compared to most approaches, most like solutions, most problem solution ways of thinking. It's sort of like most people are looking for how do I fix this? What do I do? So I've got this kind of problem. I probably need this kind of solution. Just give me one of these kinds of solution. We're like, well, what's the nature of everything? Let's just like look over here. And they're like, no, I have a problem.
What is the nature of everything?
And the cool thing is like if I can trick people or just like let them settle down enough to like, well, at least like look where I'm pointing and maybe like go hang out in this direction a bit. Suddenly they come up with a solution. Like suddenly when they're trying to like come, if they're trying to make a decision and they just know, or they're dealing with something that's difficult and suddenly they feel more peaceful about it. And the stuff that they're doing they stop doing things that are getting in the way. They get out of their own way. They stop making the situation worse. They stop making themselves feel bad within the situation. And it's often difficult to attribute to. They like, hey, come and like look at the nature of everything. Because they come back and it's more like they have more common sense. They become more sane. There's less noise in the system. And what most people actually need, rather than more urgent fixes to problems, is that they need more sanity, which I really think of as they need less insanity. So this work, like the coaching that I do, most people are looking for something to add. Like, okay, what can you do? What can we add? What can I practice? It's more like, oh, there's just a ton of subtraction. There's just a lot of really unhelpful thinking that you don't need to think about. There's a lot of really unhelpful reactions and strategies that at this point is just causing havoc. I had a friend who had all sorts of health issues, and he was literally and on multiple medications and all sorts of like medications for the medications. He got to the point where he was at death's door, like it was just time to say goodbye. And so he just got off all the medications and then recovered. And that's kind of like what's happening with most people, not necessarily in that dramatic a sense, but most people who are overwhelmed, who are stressed, who are facing these problems that look intractable, it's kind of like that, where they've just tried themselves into a corner and everything is just looks like hell and it just looks like they're gonna have to fight even harder. But actually, there's this other direction of just dropping it all. Another way I like to describe my work is helping people hit rock bottom faster, but hopefully hit rock bottom in their thinking before they need to hit rock bottom in their life. But it's that point where something in their mind just like says, screw it, I give up. Like my way of thinking, the frame that I've put on the world, what I've been trying, what I've been assuming, something is wrong. Like I know that I'm wrong in some way. So anything else but this. Like one of my clients, because one of the things I'll do is I'll look for like what's an example of wisdom for my clients in order to like find the light. One of my clients seriously, when I was asking if you could think of any moment where there's something that he just kind of knew, even though it didn't make sense. It wasn't logical, it wasn't prescribed, it wasn't out of fear, it just kind of knew it. The only example he could come up with is hiring me.
Hmm.
Like for some reason, just knew to work with me. It's like, okay, well, we'll start there. You got
Yeah.
a little bit of a feeling.
Yeah, those little inklings, and people don't, they don't listen to them, or there's, like you said, there's so much noise in their head that it can't get through. So it is kind of like doing, like you said at the beginning, I help people do less, really.
Yeah. So I always find it ironic that it's usually the executives who referred to me. I usually won't actually talk to them for a couple months because they'll keep on telling me that they're too busy. It's just like, okay. Because they think that it's gonna like take more time. Like, oh, I don't have enough time in order to like address not having enough time. I'm too overwhelmed to get help with being overwhelmed.
Yeah. I'm too dirty to take a bath.
Yeah. Like, I just need to persist in my folly a bit longer.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you help those thought leaders, the entrepreneurs, the executives, and if they heard something today, where can they reach out to you?
Well, can reach me through my website, which is authenticintegrity.com. And my email is michael@authenticintegrity.com. There's a mailing list you can sign on to from the website. And I lead online insight salons about once a month. If you're in the Bay Area, I also lead relational workshops, relational alchemy, amongst a couple other offerings here and there.
Hmm, cool. What would you leave if you had to leave us with one little pearl? What would it be?
Hmm. Give yourself permission to not know anything and to really enjoy that space of not knowing anything for a lot longer than you usually would. Because that's often the doorway to miracles.
Thanks for joining us today, Michael. It's been a pleasure. This is been the Rich Life Realization podcast, where your vibrant life is a single thought away.